Welcome. In today's lecture, we'll learn dependency injection, and we shall see in this tutorial the following things. Now, dependency injection is an ASP.NET Core MVC technique to achieve loose coupling between objects, or objects instance of classes. Now, if an controller has a dependency on another class, then in the constructor of the controller, the dependency for the class is defined. And on seeing this dependency, the core MVC provides the class object to the controller automatically. Now for this tutorial, we use ASP.NET Core Web Application. So we'll open the Visual Studio, and I'm using Visual Studio 2017 Community Edition. But if you have upgraded to Visual Studio 2019, please go ahead. So I will start from File, New Project. ASP.NET Core Web Application is already there, and I will name this as Dependency Injection. So this will be Dependency Injection. Create directory for the solution. All right. And make this as an empty project. Now this project was built using ASP.NET Core 2.0. So I will stick with that. And this project is based on an article by www.yogihosting.com, and they have given me their current permission. So I will give it in the video description link. So because it is developed in Core 2.0, all right. So click on OK. Takes a wee while. Now here I'll have to create a models folder in the root of the project. So there's the root of the project. So click on right click and add new folder. Name it models. Okay, so models folder, and I will add a class, product class. So right click, add class, and name this class product. Okay, so this is a product model. So I've got this public class product under the namespace dependency injection dot models, and within this product class I'll have two public properties. So I have had them copied on my clipboard for saving time, and then the product has got two public properties of type. One is name of type string, another is price. So name and price, basically a very rudimentary product class. All right. Now next I will create a new class named iRepository inside the models folder. So within the models folder, I will add another class which will be the interface. So this will be named as iRepository. So iRepository .cs is an interface, public interface. That's why it is the class name is the file name is iRepository. That I stands for interface. Right. So public interface iRepository, and what this repository interface contains, it's a bunch of, as you know, it contains a bunch of methods, only the signature of the method without any implementation, and the implementation will be left to the classes that is implementing the iRepository interface. Right. Now this interface will be implemented in another class called repository. So I will create now the repository class inside the models folder. So inside the models folder, I will click on add and class and this class will be known as repository. So repository, another public class repository, and so for implementing the interface there is a colon and then it implements iRepository. Okay, so click on the tab and iRepository. So repository class implements iRepository. Now, so the iRepository code I have again copied and I will just explain in a bit. So iRepository class implement iRepository interface is implemented, and this time should be all right. Yeah. So this is the implementation of the iRepository interface. So now this interface, if you look into the iRepository interface, it contains IEnumerable products. This is the get. Okay, that is a public property get, and it return another property is this is indexer, this string name, and it returns a product, and two methods, which the first method is add product, which takes in its product as an in its argument, and the other one is delete product, that also takes a product type on its argument and returns nothing. Great. Right. Now, since I don't want to fetch the products from the database for this tutorial, I am creating some product that will be kept in the memory. That's why these three products are created. Okay, this is done by the constructor of the repository class, again, that initializes a new dictionary of products, which I have already asserted, and adds three products to its dictionary, just for recapping. Now, let's see, inspect the startup class. In the startup class, we add the necessary services and configuration as follows, right? It has got a bunch of using statements, is importing all these libraries by default. So in this class, startup class, on this method configure services, which takes an iService collection object services, I'll have to add services.mvc. So I can configure the MVC on this configure services method, which returns nothing. So this method, you can see here, this method gets called by the runtime. Use this method to add services to the to the container. All right. So services dot add method to add MVC. So add MVC. So there is an add MVC method straight away, which adds MVC services to the specified iService collection. Okay, so I'll just add this default overload. So services dot add MVC. Right. Now here in the configure method, I'll get rid of what is printed by default, what is brought up by default, and instead of that I will just use a few lines of code that I have again copied on my clipboard to save time, and then just paste it over here. So app, I'm using this constructor, dependency that is being supplied to the constructor, app dot use status code pages. Now this method gets called by the runtime. Use this method to configure the HTTP request pipeline. So request, this is all about HTTP request and response. So in order to configure the request pipeline, it will be helpful. Okay, and app.use developer exception page, app.use static files, and then app.use MVC with default route. Now these have got different meanings. So next is the controller. I'll have to create a controllers folder because I have created an empty project. So I'll have to create the controllers folder to add any controller. So add new folder, controllers on the root of the web project, controllers, models and controllers, and add a new controller. I'll have to add a home controller. Add controller. Okay. Now let me create this empty as an empty controller. Add. Name it home controller. Scaffolding still. Okay, so here the action result index method is automatically generated, which returns an action result type. So return view. Now this return view I have to just modify, is equal to new. I'll supply the new repository. So repository. Repository, it's not coming, so what's missing? Anyway, it will automatically suggest a new repository dot products. So now this bulb icon, it's telling me use dependency injection dot models. All right, yeah, because I am outside the models folder into another controllers folder. That's why it is. I have to add this dependency injection dot controllers. Dependency injection using dependency injection dot models. Right, that will bring the whatever is within the models folder in this project. Now you can see clearly that in the index action method, I am creating a new object of the repository class, okay, and calling its product property. Repository class is product property. So if you click on right click and go to definition, so this one is the product property I'm going to in the repository class. Okay, so getting back again. And this contains all its products, then finally returning it on the default view as a model. Okay, my home controller is dependent on the repository class in a tightly coupled way. With dependency injection technique, I will make them loosely coupled. In the directory models folder, there is a controllers folder, so I have to create a views folder as well. So add new folder, views folder. Okay, and then add a CSHTML file, add new item, here CSHTML Razor view start, Razor view. Okay, so view imports.cshtml. Right. So I'll have to add a piece of markup that I've got it here. Now here I'll get rid of everything and just paste what I've got at using dependency injection dot models. So if you recall from your knowledge of the Razor pages, that at, when I put an at symbol to prepend with anything, that means this is a server-side code basically. And there's an index view I'll have to add inside the views home folder. So within the views, I'll have to create a home folder, add another folder, that's home, and add a view and name this view index view. So empty, because I wish to put some code on an empty right. I'll remove everything and just copy it over with the pasted code that I've got. Okay, so just save everything. So far I have not run this application. Now this view takes a model of type IEnumerable, okay, IEnumerable of product. Since the index action returns all the products in the IEnumerable manner, right? Okay, so we have seen the this controller index action. So index action, where it was index action, it returns a type IEnumerable. In an IEnumerable manner, you can say, because it returns with a repository of product objects. Now this view will show all the products in an HTML table. Now we are ready to run this application. Let's see everything is all right. So Control F5 to run the application. And I should have 3 items on the list. Still loading. Yeah, I have this name, price, women's shoes, price, skirts, and price, and pants and price. So I've got 3 items. Right. So tightly coupled controller. If you see the controller's code, so where is the controller's code? Controller's code is here. You'll find it tightly coupled to the repository class, right? Because it has to be, I mean, the repository class has to be called, a new object of repository class has to be made, and then products is called on that. Since it needs to create the object of repository class in order to return the products to the view. So that's it, called tight coupling. Now tightly coupled components are bad programming practice, since they cause the problems in maintenance of the project, because if one component changes, then it will affect the other components too. The problem when unit testing the components will come. Suppose after some time you need to show some other products that are listed in another class named new repository. In that case, you have to make changes to your controller's index action like this, So if another class has got change, and that class is known as new repository, so you have to create a new repository class like this, so which is a bad practice. New repository class. So there you go. And the best practice would be the home controller class should not have any knowledge of which class product class to use, which class product class to use, or how it is instantiated, and this will be achieved through dependency injection. Now let's come back to dependency injection. ASP.NET Core MVC makes dependency injection very easy to apply. The repository class must implement an interface, which I have already done, and in my case it is iRepository. So iRepository, that is the interface that comes handy in any dependency injection. Now we'll use that interface instead of repository class. That's the key. So previously we have used the repository class directly, if you see here, and now we are going to use the interface on which the repository class is built. So we have 2 steps over here that we have to do. First, add a variable of the interface type or iRepository type in our controller, and add a constructor having a parameter of interface type. Inside the constructor, you set the value, or I set the value of the interface variable to the value of the parameter. Okay, So these two steps are like this. I have just copied, and then on this, let's see the controllers folder again, home controller. So above, on top of the existing index method, which returns an iAction result, I'll copy a block of code. So a repository object of type iRepository is declared, and this on this home controller public constructor, repository iRepository type of object is injected, and the declared private variable within this home controller is assigned the value of the injected object into the constructor. Now we'll have to tell the core MVC how to resolve the dependency of the iRepository interface. So we'll go to the startup class. So we'll go to the startup class, and inside the configure services, okay, I'll have to add a line which is services dot there is a method add transient. So add transient, and what this does, it adds a transient service of the type specified in the service type with an implementation of the type specified in the implementation type to the specified iService collection. So here what I'll have to supply as parameters or arguments is iRepository. Sorry, iRepository. iRepository. Okay, and then repository. And this one. Now this, what this is saying, so potential fixes using dependency injection dot models. Again I have to use a models, right, because I am again inside the outside the models folder, so I have to use this dependency injections dot models folder. The add transient method I used in this listing tells the service service provider how to handle a dependency. The first type being the interface, here iRepository, while the second type being the implementation class, where is the repository. Now if you rerun the application, you can see the products displayed in the view just like below, but here you use dependency injection to lightly couple the controller. So let's run. Now again the same on the browser you have the same things, I mean output being shown, so which is exactly which tallies with what we have seen when it was tightly coupled. Now we have added the iRepository type, the interface, and it is now loosely coupled. Now here the advantage of dependency injection, suppose at a later time you need to show products from the new repository class, say another class is there, new repository. So now we must just need to change the add transient method to services.addTransient. Okay, so you can only change it to here. Okay, you don't have to do any change in the home controller. That's all because the loosely coupled components created from the dependency injection. So for a quick recap of what we've learned in this dependency injection tutorial is that we initially saw that Tight coupling, as if we see the controller's code, we'll find it was tightly coupled to the repository class. Since it needs to create the object of repository class in order to return the products to the view, just like, return view, new repository. So this is tightly coupled. We saw what is the advantage or disadvantage of tightly coupling, coupled class. And then we saw that ASP.NET Core MVC makes dependency injection very easy to apply. And the repository class must implement an interface, which we did. And in our case, it is the iRepository interface. Now use that interface instead of the repository class itself in our home controller. So we achieved this loose coupling in 2 steps, as we added a variable of the interface type iRepository in our controller and added a constructor having a parameter of interface type, and inside the constructor we set the value of the interface variable to the value of the supplied parameter. That's it. Thank you.